Right, hey everyone. Today we're back with the mechanical engineer who's trying to improve his software skills. How you doing?
Hey, very good. How about you?
Good. So last lesson, we went through a little bit about lists and loops and things like that. So today I think what we'll do is we'll do another small project. I think the best way to learn is to just make these small projects because a lot of new things pop up. And then for whatever is new in this, for the next lesson, we can kind of go more in depth and see and kind of fill the gaps. If that makes sense.
Sure.
All right, so I see you already started the project, so we're going to make a rocks, paper, scissors game. So I'm assuming that you're familiar with how that works.
Yes, I am.
All right, great. So what I think we'll do is the main way it'll work is it will take in user input, basically, and you'll go against the computer.
Mm-hmm.
So do you remember, just to start off, why don't we start by just, why don't you type this, import random. So we're going to use that later, but for now we can just have it at the top, and then so when it comes time to use it, I'll show you how those things work. So anyway, to start off, why don't we just start by defining a list, and in that list we're going to have a bunch of strings that can correspond to choices. So why don't you call that choices or something like that, so it's a little bit descriptive. And then assign that to a list of strings with rock, paper, and scissor. So then that way, this will be kind of like our reference list for what is considered a valid input.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right, cool. So the first thing we're going to want to do in this game is probably get some input from the user, right?
Mm-hmm.
So do you remember the function we have for that?
You print something telling the user to input something, and then you use input to assign something.
Right. So why don't we just maybe hit enter again so we have a little bit of separation, and then why don't we assign this to like user choice or something like that. And then this will use that input function that you just mentioned. So then do you remember what this takes in as a parameter?
Whatever the user inputs.
So inside the parentheses there, it's going to be what's printed onto the console. So this, you might want to say something like, please enter your choice for this round or something like that. So when you run this, it's going to ask the user that whatever you put in here.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
All right, cool. So then let's see. So yeah, all right. So now we have our choice. Let's assume for now, at the end of this, we're going to do some input checking and make sure that the user inputted something that actually is valid. But for now, how do you think, we need the computer to make a selection, right? Mm-hmm. And we don't want it to be a deterministic choice. We don't want to just have it like, always choose rock or always choose scissors, right? We don't want it to be deterministic. So why don't we're going to use that random library. And I'm just going to tell you the syntax, and then we can explain kind of how it works. But basically, this is going to be your computer choice. So you want to assign a variable called that. And then we're going to call a function that is defined in that random library at the top. So what the import does is it imports that module or that library. So in this case, random. So random can be used for like random number generation and some other things, but we're actually going to use random.choice.
Okay.
Yep. And then see how it auto-completes there because it knows about the random library. So this is going to take in your choices list. And I know you're writing the word choice a lot, so it starts to look weird, but so remember that random.choice is a function. So we're going to have to use parentheses to call it. And then inside of there, you can just write choices. So what this does is it will randomly select one of the three values you have in your in your list. Right?
Gotcha.
So now we have our user choice, and let's assume the input is fine there. And we have a computer choice that is randomly generated. So now what are the cases in rocks, paper, scissors that you can think of, right? For the user.
So you're gonna win. There's if obviously like scissors cuts paper, and then paper defeats rock, and then rock defeats scissor, but then there's also draws. And if there's a draw, you just have to redo it.
Right. So why don't we handle the draw first? So in this case, you can just say if the user is equal to the computer, then it's a draw, and we can just end there. You can just put the colon in there. Don't forget that. And all the conditional loops and everything. Not end. What we'll do is we'll just print draw.
Okay.
Just because, yeah, just to make it nice and simple. Right. So now, remember we were talking about if and else ifs, right?
Yep.
So that first if statement there is going to get caught on the first pass down. So it's the first thing that's hit. So if they match, it's going to print draw, and then we're done. Now, the next thing you're going to want to do is all the different combinations. And there's definitely a better way to do this, but just based on the knowledge that I know you have, we can just use if and else statements for this. So there are 3 choices, right? So there's rock, paper, and scissors. So you're probably going to need to have 3 different conditionals for those.
Okay, so let's do this.
Yep. And for now, just put the colon in there, and we'll just leave it. So you can just copy paste that line to save some time, and then just change rock to scissors.
Gotcha.
And make sure you always add a little bit of space in between them, just so we can, So it's gonna try to auto indent you. Just bump it out because we're not putting anything in the. And then just make sure you change the last one to scissor. And then we're going to use print statements to just determine if kind of the end of our program, like that's what we're waiting for, is this print. We're not going to worry about it. It's going to be a one and done thing, like run it once, one single game, you run it every time. So now inside this first one, right? So if the user is rock, you basically, the computer has 2 choices, right? Paper and scissor.
Yeah.
And each of those is going to have basically win or loss. So it's going to be a 1 or 0 for those. So yeah, you can just do it just like that. So in the case that the user did rock, and don't forget this colon, that the user did rock and the computer did paper. You can
so if we get rock and paper, then the computer wins. Yeah. It's pretty simple for all of them, right?
Yep. Now, before you type this next one, do you want an else here, or do you want another if? It's a little tricky. Based on the way you have it written currently.
Yeah, so.
Or an else if even.
Yeah, I mean, I think either one could work, or any of them could work, because.
So if you put else, right?
Yeah.
Then what would happen if the user put rock and the computer chose rock as well?
Then we have a draw up here, I think.
Right, but now look at line 12. That's another if by itself.
Oh, so it would keep running through.
Right.
Oh,
so in this case, just because we're kind of blocking it off like this, you do need an else if here, so an elif.
Okay. Elif, right?
So yeah. So this way we don't. I mean, you could definitely change this whole control flow to work in a different way, but based on the way you have it, this way, if it is a draw, none of these print statements will get executed, basically.
Okay. Oh, so okay, I see.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's one of the tricky things, and had we ran it, you would see that happened. It would be a little confusing, and then you would have to, think a little bit about why it happened. But
okay.
All right, great. So now you can probably just copy and paste that and change the results.
Yeah. So rock, paper, and rock, then the user wins, you win. Then If we have scissors and paper, then the computer wins. Scissors and paper, then scissors win, so you win. Then scissors, wait, we don't want that. We want rock. Then rock wins, so that's computer wins. Okay. How's that look?
That looks good. So now the only thing we have to do, let's just to learn a new formatting, a string formatter. What you can do is just hit enter, excuse me, enter again there. And then we're just going to print what the computer selected and what you selected. So to do that, you can type computer selected, like, just a string, just printing like info to the console there. So you can say computer selected, and then you're going to do space. And then within the string, within the quotes, so bump to the left too. And then hit space. And then open and close curly brackets within the string.
Oh, within the string.
And then on the string there, so now hit backspace one more time. So you're on the right. There you go. Now hit dot format to the right of the string.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And then open parenthesis. And you're going to put computer choice. There you go. So now I just walked through the syntax, but what this basically does is, in place of that open and close curly bracket, the computer choice variable is going to be put in there. So dot format will do that replacement for you.
Okay, cool.
So now you can just copy that line, and you do the same thing for the user choice.
You selected, right?
Yep.
Selected the format. User. Okay.
All right, cool. So why don't you run this? We'll see what happens and make sure we don't have any errors. Oh, it looks like you're running the previous project you had. So why don't you go up to run and see how it says run calculator?
Okay.
There you go.
Please enter your choice. Let's do rock.
There you go. So now what I want you to do is run it again, and this time just type nonsense into the thing, and we'll see what happens.
Okay.
So in reality, that probably shouldn't have executed, right?
Yeah.
So what we can do is, if you scroll to the top here, why don't we assign at the very top of this, right? Why don't we say user choice equals none? Above,
okay.
Yeah. Yes. And then capital none, capital N, and then many. Yep. So that's a none type in Python. Excuse me. So basically, just like you have other data types, none is a type. We can talk about that in a future lesson, but for now, just know that it's kind of like it's assigned to nothing. It's kind of like a placeholder. So what we need to do is validate the user input. So we want to make sure that the value that now listen to the way I say this too, that the value that they input there is in our choices list. So what you can do is right after you assign user choice there, you just have some kind of conditional check to see if that choice is in the choices list.
Okay, so I'll do if user choice.
And now I don't think we talked about this, but just based on the way I said it, right? So think that Python's really English-like. So user choice is not in choices. You can get rid of is and you just say not in, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. So that's why I was just trying to say it there, so you'd see that it's basically just English.
Yeah.
So if it's not in there, then you can just print, something saying like invalid choice. And then below that line, and then this is not the best practice, but just for the purposes of learning all this stuff, you can just reassign user choice to none within this conditional. So that way, none of our conditionals below are going to be executed.
Okay.
So now try to run this, and we'll see how this goes.
And some gibberish.
Yep. Invalid choice. So we still have that print at the bottom that says what the computer selected, right?
Yeah.
So that's totally fine. I mean, we can add some more logic basically for that print to not print those things if none, if user choice is none, right? If you want to add, actually, why don't you add that in really quick? Why don't you put both of those bottom print statements in a conditional? That's basically checking if user choice is none.
So if user choice, how do I do it? The not in. This
would work. Why don't we just do a direct check to see if user choice is none?
Okay. User choice is equals none.
Yeah, why don't you try to run that? I think you have to do is none, but try that. Yeah, so why don't you do is none there?
Instead of equals?
Yep.
Is that because equals would be for like an integer?
So equals is, why don't you run this? We'll make sure that I'm I don't know, maybe not. Well, regardless, you know what? I'm gonna look into this and then I'll let you know. But all right, so overall, I'd say good job. Like I said, I'll check this, double check how to do this. Oh, you know what you can do? In front of user choice there, you can just the type. So type TYPE, open parenthesis, and then close, and then you can change the is to an equals. Now let's try that. There we go. Yeah, that was my bad. We weren't checking the type. So like I said, none is a type, so we want to check that the type of our variable is none. So that's assigned to the value of none. Yeah, that was my bad. I think I explained it. But so if you put type around a string, it'll return string, and around an int, it'll do int, and you can check data types that way. We're gonna do that. I think next lesson we'll put into a little product we're building. But yeah, overall, good job. I think next time we're gonna look at strings a little more in depth, and this thing called slicing. And if we have time, we might even start looking into dictionaries. So
cool. Sounds good.